This is an interesting story that caught my eye yesterday, and I thought immediately we have to get a lawyer on to discuss this. It's a story about a wealthy businessman. He is going to have to pay more than 50,000 a month in spousal support for 10 years to a woman he had a long-term relationship with, even though they kept separate homes and had no children together. That was a ruling from Ontario's top court. Under Ontario law, an unmarried couple are considered common law spouses if they live together, right? We know this. And that has to be continuously for about 3 years. So this is such an unusual case. We'd like to welcome to the show Laura Paris, associate lawyer at Shulman and Partners. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, can you give us some background on how the judge reached this conclusion that this man would have to pay more than $50,000 a month in spousal support?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what's really interesting is that people believe when they're kind of looking at the definition of what common law means is that they have to be physically living together for a period of 3 years or more. Sharing physical residence is actually not a requirement to be considered common law, and this is something that isn't new or specific to this current case. This is something that's been established in case law years ago. So I think that what's most shocking about this case is that a lot of is due to the fact that a lot of people have this misconception that you have to share a physical residence in order to be considered common law. When in making this decision, the judge looks at different factors in terms of deciding whether or not someone has reached the threshold of a spouse. Shelter is one of the factors that you consider. So whether or not you're living together. In this specific case, they weren't living together every day, but they did have periods of intermittently living together. So they would share summers at the cottage in Muskoka. They would spend weekends at a condo in Florida. So while they maintained separate residences throughout for the majority of the year, they were sharing residences here and there. Also, in terms of how you present yourself to society. So do you present yourself as a couple? In this case, he had bought her a 7.5 carat ring. He had proposed to her on several occasions. To the best of my knowledge, the only reason they never actually got married was because they couldn't agree to terms of a prenup. So, essentially what it comes down to is just because in the husband's in the male's mind that he didn't want to call it a relationship. The reality was that it was a relationship and it did amount to a common law relationship, and therefore she was able to make claims under the Family Law Act.
Yeah, it's such an interesting ruling. I mean, in most people's minds, I think, because we are so used to the idea of cohabitation, meaning you're living together in the same residence. These two even kept separate bank accounts. They never owned common property. So I would imagine it's either her cottage or his cottage. But at the end of the day, it's about time spent together. Is that correct? And the perception of other people around you in your social circles.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, there's different types of factors that are considered. So, living arrangements are considered. What your physical relationship is. What services did you complete for each other during the relationship? So, like in this case, she quit her job to be able to kind of run errands for him and I guess be at his beck and call to a certain extent. So, this created kind of an interdependency between the two of them, which is something that is akin to a marriage-like or spousal relationship. And these are the types of things that are considered. It's not just simply based on shared physical residence.
Okay, so are we going to see more cases like this in the future, do you think? And what's the takeaway from this ruling?
Well, I think that again, this case isn't completely unusual. I think that it's just to common knowledge, it's a bit shocking to hear because people again they associate cohabitation with physically living together. So in terms of how it's practically going to, what the practical implications are going to be, I mean, I think most practicing family lawyers are aware that it's possible to be considered a spouse when you're not living together consecutively. But what I think it will do in terms of the public, is that a lot of people perhaps are now going to start considering whether or not they have family law claims, and it may start opening their eyes to the fact that they may be in a situation where they thought that they didn't have a claim, but now maybe this is an opportunity for them to make a claim.
Right. I want to thank you for your time. It's been really informative because I know that lawyers would be well versed on this topic, but for the average person that's getting pretty serious with someone they've been dating for a while, it's a little heads up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that what cases like this, need to show us is that, when you are entering into kind of a relationship of any sort of permanence, it makes sense to go and talk to a lawyer and make sure that you are protecting yourself in terms of your rights and obligations, and that you do have all the information that you need to make informed decisions about these relationships that you're entering into and how you're going to approach these relationships.
Oh, but Laura, that is so unromantic.
It is, but you have to, you have to be practical. I mean, you can be in love, but you have to be practical about it.
Chris, my producer's just asked me a question, and he's married, so I don't know where he's getting this question from. But do you need a prenup with your girlfriend then?
I mean, you could. It would be considered a cohabitation agreement. But again, it all depends, right? And that's the thing when it comes to common law relationships. It's so fact specific. Like when you're entering into a marriage, it's a lot more cut and dry. Where that you're equalizing your assets. Things are going to go more or less 50-50. When it's common law, things are up in the air. So I actually, in my professional opinion, I would say that it's more, you should actually go talk to a lawyer if you're entering into a common law relationship more than you need to when you're entering into a marriage.
Wow. And that's funny because most people don't enter into a marriage because, somewhere in the back of the mind, maybe they've been divorced or something and they think, I don't want to get into that again. Like, I think it's safer for me to, not say I do and just live with you or, we each keep our own place and maybe we'll get along better. I'll see you at yours and you'll see. Yeah,
that's this case. That's this case here. This is an individual who was there. These are both second relationships for these people that they were both in marriages prior. And in my view, in my reading of this case, I think that it was clear that this guy was trying to protect himself, but because they couldn't agree to the terms of this prenup, he thought in his mind, well, it's not a real relationship because I didn't marry her, but that's not.
And that wouldn't be taken into account, Laura? I mean, that seems like something that the judge should take into account.
I mean, I think it certainly would have been taken into account, but it's you're balancing it against other factors, and that's what it comes down to. And this is where I say, when it comes to common law relationships, everything's so up in the air. It's all discretionary. But when you're in a marriage, it's like, okay, well, now you're married. There's no question as to whether or not you're a spouse, and this is the legislation that applies to you. When it's common law, it's not that simple. Which is again why I say, when you're in common law relationships, it's probably even more important that you speak to a lawyer and enter into these agreements.
Well, Laura, I think that one group that will be happy here is lawyers.
Yeah.
Your business is going to keep humming along.
I'm sure, yeah.
Expect a call from a few people that were listening in. Laura Paris, associate lawyer at Shulman Partners. Thank you so much for your time and have a great weekend.
Thanks for having me. You too.
Are you loyal? Is he getting the job? Are you loyal?
Wednesdays on W Network.
Let's get to work. Let's not lose money.
Patrick Dempsey.
How do you expect me to protect you if you don't tell me the truth?
Alessandro Borghi.
I was born low. The only way I could ever go was up.
Sometimes I almost believe you really do care for Massimo.
Of course I do.
You don't really care for anyone, Dominic. It's beyond your grasp.
Devils. New series Wednesdays, only on W Network. Also available on Stack TV.